Supernatural reboot directed by Ryan Murphy.
Hey, bestie, that is the worst thing you've ever said.
Hello, and welcome to Super Hell, also known as the Mystery Spotcast, a show where two recovering Supernatural fans subject themselves to a rewatch. My name is Ollie. My pronouns are they, them. You can find me on social media at OllieFresh.
And I'm Claudia. My pronouns are she, her, and you can find me on social media at Kaludia Says, Kaludia Says.
The point of this podcast is that we are going to rewatch the entire show. Our current kind of idea is that we're going to do one episode per podcast episode, which is an extreme undertaking because there are like, how many episodes of that show? A lot, right?
There's 15 seasons.
So
and it's more than 20 episodes a season. So,
that's
yeah.
I did just check. It's 327. So we're probably gonna lump some.
That's more than Sailor Moon.
I have no frame of reference for that.
That's 200 for the original Sailor Moon anime.
So I do think we'll probably do like for big episodes, probably one per episode of the Mystery Spotcast, and then some we might lump together depending on how content heavy they are. But for now, we're talking about the first episode. I think, in case you didn't watch Supernatural, I'm going to say that's not a prerequisite for this show. You don't have to watch it with us. It might help your understanding, but we're going to give you a bit of a rundown of what the story was about.
Would we like to start with what is our personal history with Supernatural and why are we here today?
I think that sounds like a great idea. So, as we said in the intro, we're recovering fans. Both of us watched it while it was on to different extents. And both of us have deeply troubling relationships with the show. I know when I first watched it, I was in, I believe, my freshman, sophomore year of high school. So, I was having teenage emotions. I did watch like the entire show up to that point, which I believe was like, I want to say like 8 or so seasons. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it was a significant amount of seasons I watched over the span of like 6 months. So to say I had brainworms is an understatement.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older, slightly older than you. So I was on Tumblr in the 2010s to mid 2010s, and I got into Doctor Who first, and then eventually I was like, all right, let me get into Supernatural. And by the time I got into Supernatural, it was like my senior year of high school into college. So I did I believe 8 seasons in the span of less than a year. So
Yeah.
I would like you to imagine me starting in an Ivy League school with supernatural brain rot, and other people are like, I'm going to go to a frat party. And I was like, I'm going to take my laptop with a HDMI cord, plug it into the TV in the lounge, in this historical dorm room, and watch about, 4 to 5 seasons of Supernatural 24/7. People would walk by and be like, oh, she's still there.
Oh my God.
And I was full on drawing tally marks on my arms, super hula kind of person.
Oh yeah.
But I was walking around wearing flannels, listening to classic rock. It was bad.
No, me too. You can't. I had a Samuel,
I still have a Samulet and I do still wear it. It is kind of a bop.
No, it does hit, they got that one right. I will say I did, if you couldn't tell by everything about me, I did theater in high school. Not a lot. I did mostly backstage kind of stuff because I was also in marching band. So a lot of people I knew were there. So there was one time where I was supposed to come out and bow, and I did miss my cue by a couple of seconds because I was sitting in the dressing room watching Supernatural on my telephone. Um, so that was not good. But that was kind of the state of mind where I was at, where it was like, hey, you're having trouble in school. And I was like, well, Dean Winchester didn't go to school, so it's fine.
Yeah, I was like actively starting to fail. It was also like, I don't know, I got to an unstructured environment, and then I was just like, I also got really into How I Met Your Mother at the same time. Bad choices were made. And I was like, well, classwork, that's not happening. But
Yeah.
Supernatural, that's happening. And it became a sickness. I do remember like
Yeah.
listening to all the songs and everything, and my mom being like, those are just like classic rock songs that were like popular when I was younger. Like, what the fuck are you listening to? And I'm like, you don't understand the significance.
I think that you're not a real Supernatural fan until you try to gatekeep Carry On Wayward Son. I do think it's like, that video of the girl where she's like, I think I know more about American Girl dolls than you do, genius. That's like me to my like boomer dad about Carry On Wayward Son.
I'm like, actually, Highway to Hell is about Dean Winchester.
It's like, honestly, it's really disrespectful of you to listen to Heat of the Moment when Sam Winchester had to suffer with that song. Like, that is so disrespectful.
I used to listen to that song and my mom would be like, what the fuck? Why are you listening to Asia? Like, that song wasn't even like popular when I was younger. Like, of all the songs, why? And I was like, again, you don't get it.
Yeah.
It has like cultural significance.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Mom. That's actually so funny. I think you should shut your cake hole.
No, get out.
But I think also another important thing to note, I was also, both of us were deeply into the shits of Tumblr when that show was coming out. So we got to witness it firsthand. I think I started watching it because people on that godforsaken website were watching it. Because I was in high school, I did not know a lot about like feminism or politics or that sort of thing. And I was like, well, people on Tumblr are all feminists and they like Supernatural, so it must be a really good like progressive show. So I remember watching it in that mindset and being like, every time something weird would happen, I'm like, well, I'm sure it's a satire, I'm sure it's some sort of commentary. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, no, that was just bad.
No, and it's weird because it was the end of my trifecta. I did Doctor Who first, and I was watching it as it was coming out. Then I did Sherlock, and then I did Super. Like it was the end piece it was the last Infinity Stone in the gauntlet. And so I felt like not pressured into it. I knew that I was gonna like it. I was just like, there's so much of it. And I don't know if it wasn't on Netflix at the time or like Netflix wasn't as popular or whatever, but like it just became like very accessible at one point, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I also was like very heterosexual. Like I didn't realize I was queer until after college. So I was like, all of these gift sets, hello, I am attracted to a man or two.
Like I can't be a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm attracted to Dean Winchester. I will say one of the I did think there was a point in high school where I did cut my hair short because I was like, oh my God, just like Dean Winchester. And I'm looking back and I'm like, how did I not know that I was not cishet in that moment? We may never know.
Dean Winchester is, I mean, Supernatural in general, much like Star Wars, is the most homosexual and homophobic thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, like, what is gayer than extremely heterosexual Dean Winchester, and the fact that just everything about him, everybody's like, I like that funky little dude. And you're like, he is literally a cishet man. A cishet white man.
This is the thing.
Has a lot of guns.
Here's the thing I think about that. there's a tendency of people, especially online and in fandom, to take the most toxic man in the show and say, what if he was a little fruity, I think that happens a lot. You see it all the time where it's like there's a character who's a womanizer and it's like, but what if he was bisexual, which I think is very powerful. I yeah, it's a funky little show. I don't know how, like, I don't know what it is about it, but it's got something. There's something in there that draws you in.
Well, the other piece of it is, so we will be rewatching it, and so as we were rewatching it, like, the thing that I have to remember to myself is that, like, the first 4 seasons, and this is why a lot of people are like, oh, you could just stop watching after that, or like, it was actually good after that, or whatever. They're actually a very cool and interesting storyline. And I think the reason I just grabbed onto it as a young person was I was reading a lot of the Bible fan fiction of it all, but I was grabbing onto a lot of things that were very, like, meaning of life universe kind of stuff. Like, I got really into, obviously I had always been into His Dark Materials. I had always been into
Same.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I had just, like, had a literally life-changing experience getting into Doctor Who. Like, I was a different person afterwards. And then I got into Supernatural, where, like, actually, it has, like, some actually interesting shit in the first couple of seasons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll get into that a little bit too later, but like there were parts that I watched where I was like, oh, this is actually has meaning. Like, I actually care about this.
You're like, oh, this is kind of funky fresh.
Is this good?
Is this that is the crux of it, is that it's good, like, I don't know, 30% of the time, maybe 40% in the earlier seasons, and then it's like, I got some questions the rest of the time. And then there's Grey Wig Sam.
Oh my god. I think it's also important to note that I did stop watching around the time when they were in the bunker. I don't remember exactly when it was. I know that it was after Cass had to get his job at the gas station. I remember being really
Cass was homeless.
Yeah.
Opa homeless.
Yeah, it was after Opa homeless style Castiel. But I think it was slightly after he had, like, reunited with them. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I have not watched it. I've literally not watched a single episode since then. So I'm going back. I'm trying to go back with the mindset of someone who's, like, just getting into it for the first time and knows nothing about it. Because I think when I first watched it, I was very much, like, influenced by fandom, and I was like, I kind of knew what was going to happen because there were already, like, 8 or 9 seasons.
Yeah, I was like, where's Cass? Where
exactly.
is he? Chop chop.
And I was like, there's gonna be homosexuals in this show. I'm waiting for it. So I think that was kind of what I was like. I was anticipating that the whole time. So I'm trying to rewatch this now, thinking, like, I'm just a casual fan who's like, yeah, that's a funky, fresh little concept there. So that's kind of where I'm at with vis-a-vis this show.
I am the opposite. I'm one of the few people who kept watching this entire time. After a while, it became, well, I've invested this much time. Why the fuck not? And then it became like, you know what? This is my funky little trash show. I'm having a good time. There were times where I was like, what the hell is going on? But I was like, I've invested so much time. Like, I'm in it to fucking win it at this point.
Yeah.
And that's why I just kept going. Like, it was just kind of a point of no return. Yeah. And
it's like, what's the point? If you stop right now, what's the point?
Yeah. What was it worth it?
Yeah.
And then I said this 1 year ago when this episode is dropping. I said this on that fateful day, that I also was watching it because I never thought Destiel was going to happen. I was like, no, it's a homophobic show. No. But I thought, if in the 0% chance that it did happen, I would want to be caught up and I would want to know what was happening. It's not, so I'm just going to keep watching because I've invested so much of my time.
Bestie,
But if
I
it
have
did,
news for you. You know how you said that 0.0%? It's actually more like 0.0001%.
like, I was like, you know, it's never going to happen. Like, but if it did, I want to be, like, ready, and I want to be, like, first on the scene. And when it did, I felt like the Oracle of Delphi. Like, I literally...
I have something to tell you that I've never shared with anyone.
Oh, no.
I did used to be an admin on a Destiel countdown clock where every day it would say if Destiel was canon.
Oh my god.
Um
We have just a BNF over here.
but I think speaking of, let's talk a little bit about that the fateful day. The fateful day. The faithful day. I mean, it was
Happy
a day for the
1 year.
faithful.
Happy 1 year anniversary.
Happy 1 year anniversary. I so it happened on November 5th, 2020. The election had just happened. We didn't know the results yet. I had been in a heated political conversation with a member of my family, and I went upstairs to my room to be by myself and be angry. I opened my phone and go on to tumblr.com just to be like, what's going on? There's a lot there. I did see, the first thing I remember seeing was they sent him to super hell. And I was like, who's going to super hell? I just assumed it was some shit post, so I scrolled past it, and then I kept seeing stuff, and I was like, wait, what happened? And then I was like, Supernatural, oh my god, like, what is going on? But I was like, I have not seen that many people talk about Supernatural for so long, and I clicked in, and I was like, oh, Castiel got sent to super hell. That doesn't seem like such a big deal. Huh? He got sent for why? Wait. And then I was like, wait, Castiel got sent to super hell for being gay. It's like they canonized Destiel in the most homophobic way.
I made a TikTok earlier today about Voltron, and I was talking about how Voltron and Supernatural ended up being literally exactly the same. And they were like, they gave us gay people in the most homophobic way possible. Also, shout out to Tarkin Talk.
Get Tarkin Talk out of here. That's if you're deep in the shits of Star Wars TikTok, Tarkin Talk is
it's a lot.
Unfortunate.
But it's much like it. They were like, you get a fruit, but at what cost? And
yeah.
So my story is quite my Destiel. Hi, welcome to my Destiel story.
This is the new. It's like the new TLC show, My Destiel Recovery.
Humans of New York, but it's My Destiel story. Humans of Destiel.
Oh my god.
So, for those who do or do not know me, I work in the news. So you can imagine the state that my mental health and brain was in by November of 2020. For some personal background, the previous week, I had been doxxed by Jack Posobiec on Twitter. And some other things had occurred. And I was in quite the mental space. And I don't work for, like, anywhere that does, like, breaking news, but we are covering the election. So I was working fairly late, and on November 5th, we were waiting for results from different states. And so I was working evening shift, like, waiting around. And I am also one of those people who watches Supernatural as it comes out. And it doesn't usually hit the CW website until the next day. And, like, even if you pirate it, like, the pirated, like, files or whatever don't usually
not that we would ever do that. We would
Yeah,
never.
we would never. I do have my parents' cable login. I actually do watch it on the CW site, but I usually wait until the next day to watch it. So I wasn't like paying attention. I don't like. I see it when it trends on Twitter or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch it tomorrow, whatever. Not like there's like big spoilers. It's fucking Supernatural. It's been on for 15 seasons. You know what I
You're
mean?
like, what more could happen? Little did you know.
Literally. So I am sitting there. I am working. I am in a fragile mental state. And I have also not tweeted about anything political because I have been attacked for the past week. I go to the bathroom and I get I get a Discord message from a friend. Shout out to Savannah. Saying, "We did it. We won." And I'm like, what are
we
you
did it,
talking
Joe.
about? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's who? What? Which state?
Oh my God. You literally were like, we did it, Joe. But then they were like, no.
And then she's like, no, check Tumblr. And I'm like, there's no election results on Tumblr. What the fuck are you talking about? You know, my brain is in a mode, you know? And I go on Tumblr, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Whatever. And I see like one post, and I'm like, I'm sorry? What? And at first, I was like mad. I was like, I literally am about to watch this fucking episode tomorrow, and you're gonna fucking spoil it for me. And then I like see a couple posts. I'm like, I'm sorry. And so I tweet something being like, I'm sorry, did Destiel just happen? What the fuck? And then about 50 people start responding to me being like, what just happened? I was, I think, one of the first people to bring it from Tumblr to Twitter, of people being
With
like,
your blue
I'm
check
sorry.
mark.
I was not verified at the time.
Oh my God. That's what got you the blue check mark.
No!
They were like, this person brought Destiel to Twitter. This is this is who we need on the forefront.
There were a lot of people who were like, it was your tweet, was that how I found out. And I was like, why? At what cost? And
with great power comes great responsibility.
And so a little bit of a lore drop. I do have a friend who did work on the show, and I text her and I'm like, hey bestie, what the fuck does this mean? And she was like, you're welcome. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I gotta go find a way to hypothetically watch the episode.
Oh my God.
I'm like frantically looking for a way to watch the episode. I'm like still technically working.
Okay, but what's more important?
Yeah, I have notifications on my phone for like the AP election results, and I tell my partner, I'm like, we need to watch Supernatural right now. And they're like, what? Why? And they don't watch it, but they had been watching this season with me, and so I like stop working to go watch it. And at this point, about some of it had been spoiled for me that like it had happened, but I didn't know like the context, because like I knew what was happening that season, so I was like, wait, how? What? Huh? And I watched the episode, and I was like, I'm sorry. And then by the time I finished the episode was when I came back to Tumblr and all fucking hell had broken loose. And so then there were people being like, he was sent to super hell, whatever. So I had to be one of those people to be like, actually, I actually have been watching the show. And I did watch the actual episode, and here is what happened. And then there were the Putin rumors, which were based on nothing, but did become very funny memes. And it did devolve.
I did want to add, like, then System of a Down was like, we're also going to release a new song after not releasing anything for 15 years. And I was like, you can't do this to me right now. Like, not the sequel to Chop Suey coming out, the Destiel theme song.
Like, and I also want to say, like, I was tweeting about nothing but Destiel. So people who had seen me, like, tweet anti-fascist shit for the past 6 months, then go radio silent after being harassed, then saw me tweet nothing but Destiel for the next week. I did get an email from my employer the next day, being like, hi, one of your colleagues, sent us a post of yours and is concerned about your mental health. And I was
Oh,
like, bestie, are you sure? Because I have only posted anywhere about Destiel. So,
this does remind me one time I was at a thing for my color guard in high school, and uh one of the few people who I know in real life who follows me on Tumblr, who is also in my color guard, went, you post a lot about Destiel. And I was like, that's so troubling. I'm going to
oh
go
no.
and delete my blog. I didn't, but it did make me upset. I think that was when I was like, I have a problem. um,
I will say I was in a fragile mental place, and that was like that was so. I know that it was horrible, but it also did feel like kind of a win, and I did backslide into becoming a huge Destiel person. I was reading Destiel fic for the next like a month. It was how I coped with a lot that was going on. Um,
yeah,
and I don't regret it. I don't.
as you correct. I think you hold on to what brings you joy.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, then the next two following weeks and the ensuing fallout of the finale, that sucked ass. But like,
yeah,
I did live my bliss
I
for a
don't
little bit.
I don't know what happened because I have not watched that. I know for a fact there was a woman who had red hair. I don't know anything about her. I just know she was there. I know their mom was there. I guess maybe. So that kind of goes to the extent. So I was thinking, it might be nice if I try to tell you what I think happened in that episode.
Yeah, yeah,
How I
enlighten
think
us.
Destiel got canonized.
Yeah.
Okay. Episode opens. um Someone is like, some demon is like, I hate gay people are horrible and I hate them and I don't think they should be happy. And then Cass and Dean are fighting, not fight, they're fighting together, not like they're fighting each other. And it's like, hey, in order to get this beast, this monster, their monster of the week to go away, someone has to sacrifice themselves. And Cass is like, okay, well, I'm gonna die anyway. I love you. And Dean's like, as a friend, right? As a friend, not like in a gay way. I'm homophobic. Just kidding. Dean's not homophobic, probably. Um, so then a big monster is like, well, now that you've experienced happiness, I need to kill you. And then he dies. And then Dean goes back to Sam. And Sam's like, where's Cass? And Dean's like, oh, fucking fruit. I don't know. Um, I do think it was basically what I know about it is that there was some sort of black sludge. I know that he said, I love you. And I know that Dean just stood there. Um, that's pretty much the extent of what I know. And I know that it had to do with like he experienced happiness and that's why he died. I do think
That makes it worse.
yeah, I'm like, wow, gay people are happy. Time to send them to hell. I'm like, that doesn't feel good. Am I
I will say
close?
I will say this. I mean, the one of the only openly gay writers on Supernatural did write that episode, so like
Iconic.
they finally let that person out the gate to do what they needed to do. And like it is Supernatural, so they were like, we can't let you do too much. We are gonna have to kill him at the end. And it was like no hate to the writer at
Oh
all. Like
yeah,
you did what
absolutely.
you had to motherfucking do, and I'm glad you got to slide it in at the end. Like,
Yeah.
you know what, I respect you.
Yeah.
You were actually very close.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and I did kind of go to bat for this. um Dean was not as homophobic as people said he was. Like,
Oh, great.
there is a moment where I was genuinely like choked the fuck up, where I think he comes, I don't know if it's like after the commercial break or like it comes back or whatever. There's like and it's not in that scene that everybody like gifs and was making memes of on Tumblr, but of him like Castiel gets sent to super hell, and then he like collapses on the floor and like has a mental breakdown because I think he just realized, oh shit, I'm gay. This sucks. So actually, like I was like, he is actually quite sad about it.
I do like Dean. I do like Dean being like, Dang, I do need to face my toxic masculinity and my comp at all in one moment because my man got sent to super hell. That's a
Like
very bad moment.
the look in his eyes is like, I do need to reevaluate everything right now, and it's also not the time, and I'm having one of those fucking moments.
It's a little too late for that, Dean.
Yeah, it is. So I was like, I'm gonna give him a pass for that one because he did actually genuinely look sad. I will also say it was even a little gayer because for some background for the people who don't know,
In case you've never watched Supernatural.
in case you didn't get that far, they were raising a child together.
Wait, okay. Okay, I know I made a joke about never seeing Supernatural, but I did not know that.
I don't. Since we are gonna rewatch the whole thing, I don't want to spoil too much of it for you. But they were raising a child together, like the two of them, and also Sam. It was a very like Clone Wars, everyone raising Ahsoka kind of moment. They were all raising a child, and Castiel very much like considered himself like kind of like with like Anakin and his he was like the dad or older brother figure.
Oh my god, I have
Cass
just
is
come up.
Anakin.
Cass is the I
Also,
feel like Padme Dean. That's very funny.
But the joke here is also that that kid does canonically watch the Clone Wars and pronounce Ahsoka wrong.
Wait,
he does at one point go, wow, he's like, wow, I really like this Anakin character, and then Sam has to be like, oh,
oh.
It's quite possibly the funniest fucking scene in all of Supernatural. Because the kid is the Antichrist, so him talking about Anakin is very funny.
Oh my god, I love that. It's like finally some good Antichrist representation in media.
He is just like a funky little. This show goes from. So we're gonna talk about the first episode here, but the show goes from, hi, I'm Dean Winchester, I'm 26 years old, and I'm a womanizer, to, hi, I'm Dean Winchester, my back hurts, I live in a bunker with my brother and this fucking angel, I'm raising a teenager, I am Gen X, and this teenager is Gen Z.
Oh my god, I did just come up with the concept of this child who I don't know.
His name is Jack.
I do like the idea of him teaching Dean Winchester how to do TikTok dances. I think the idea of Dean Winchester doing it, getting a TikTok, and he's like, oh, this is so stupid, I don't want to do that, and then he gets his own and he's like, what's up, guys? And like, you can't do it like
TikTok, what side of TikTok do you think that he would end up on?
Have you ever seen that video of Shawn Mendes when they were like, what does your For You page look like? And he was like, you don't want to know what my For You page looks like. And they were like, okay, like, what does it look like? And he just would like not tell them. That's like Dean.
Dean is one of those people who the For You page figured out he was gay before he was.
Yeah, he's like, why does it keep showing me all these dudes?
And
this app is gay.
And Sam is like, I hate to explain algorithms to you, but bestie, I have some news.
Oh my god. So speaking of the first episode,
let's begin with the road so far. Episode 1. Episode 1. So I just want to say, let's talk a little bit about what occurs in this episode.
Yeah. So this begins in a difficult way. I don't know how else to put it. We do see the beautiful nuclear family. There are 2.5 children. No, there's only 2 of them as far as we know. Well, actually, I think there might be more.
There is a third one!
They really are 2.5 children. I love that. Yeah! We start with their MILF mom, who was very MILFy, being like, good night, baby, Sammy, little guy. Then she's like, oh, why is the baby crying? And she goes in and she's like, oh, my husband's with the baby. And then she goes downstairs and she's like, oh, my husband's asleep on the couch. So she goes back upstairs and screams. Then dad runs upstairs and is like, what's going on? And she is on fire on the ceiling over Sam's bed crib.
And the thing is that like they first realize it because there's like blood drips onto his hand as he's like trying to like touch the baby, and then he looks up and there she is like smacked up against the ceiling
Yeah.
with fire around her.
Yeah, it looks like someone took a giant fan and is blowing her up at the ceiling. She's just
Yeah, and she's wearing
there.
like a white nightgown. I guess it's supposed to be in like the 80s or something. I don't know. Um
I think it's the 80s, yeah.
yeah, it's the 80s given when Dean was born.
If we
Yes,
calculate this.
it's very much like that, and then it's like, all right, we got to get out the house. The house is burning down. Here, Dean, here's your baby brother. Go save him. And they run out the house, and it's very like, oh my god, it's foreshadowing because he's always saving his brother. Like that's the whole point of the whole show. Like,
Yeah.
I did get a little emotional watching
Yeah,
that part.
I did too. When that happened, I was like, damn, run. And when they're sitting outside, like while they're the firefighters come and like put out the house fire because the whole house like catches on fire and like explodes. It was crazy. But while there's firefighters there and Sam and Dean who are babies and their dad is just like sitting there, like I was like, dang, this is high key very sad.
Her dad is sitting there entering his Joker era.
Literally, no, he was like, yeah, you know that letterbox review that's like this about Joker that's like this happened to my buddy Eric. That's like that.
Yeah, and then basically then we flash forward, and it was kind of great that we both rewatched this. We're recording this before Halloween because
Yeah.
the first episode takes place mostly on Halloween. Sam is at Stanford. He's about to graduate, and he's trying to get into law school. He does say that he got a 174 on the LSAT, which is 1 point below Elwood's, who got
could
a
never.
175.
Look, Elle Woods could hunt monsters and demons and stuff. Sam Winchester could not have cracked that case. He could not have.
Actually, I think Sam Winchester could have been a Delta Nu. I do think he does have the range.
I think he could have been a Delta Nu. I don't think that he had her. He wouldn't have been able to tell that he was gay from the shoes.
He would have definitely been able to clock that he was gay because he hangs out with Dean so
He's
much
so
in
used
his
to being
gaydar.
so used to being on his repressed brother. Speaking of his repressed brother, so Sam is like, he lives with his beautiful girlfriend, Jess, who I'm obsessed with. He's like living this normal life, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to grad school, or I'm gonna go to law school or whatever. So he gets home from this Halloween party, and he and Jess are like asleep, and he hears something, and he goes downstairs, and this dude just beats the shit out of him. And he's like, what the fuck? And it's Dean. He's like, Dean, why did you just kick my ass? And I did write down in my notes, #boys will be boys. Just
No, actually,
shit out of your brother.
Dean doesn't kick his ass. Dean sneaks into the house, and then Sam kicks his ass because he thinks he's some random. And then
he
Dean
did break into the house.
See? Yeah, he's like, and Dean's like, see, you're like, you know, your reflexes or whatever, and they like make fun of each other, whatever, and you're like, it really does set the precedent of like, you people are so fucking dysfunctional. Could you not just knock on the fucking door?
Yeah,
or,
no.
like, call him, be like, surprise, bitch, I'm outside. You couldn't even just like throw a rock at his window if you wanted to be a bitch. No, you had to break into the house.
Yeah,
like,
straight up, he was in their kitchen. And Jess comes downstairs, and she's so nonchalant. She's like, oh, is this your brother? Like, she wasn't like, dude, you just broke our window. And also, here's the thing too. I know Sam does not have, I've been to college. It's expensive. I know Sam does not have a lot of money. I know that that's Jess's house. That Dean just broke the window up.
Or he has like several roommates, like maybe him and Jess live on like in one room on one floor or whatever.
Sucks to the other, sorry, spoiler for the end of the episode, but sucks for the other roommates who got involved in that drama.
Oh no. But yeah, this is kind of the classic moment, which you will have seen in many a Tumblr gif. where Sam's like, the fuck are you doing here? And Dean is like, Dad's been on a hunting trip.
Yeah.
The fact that I can do the cadence.
Yeah, he's been on a hunting trip and he hasn't called for, he hasn't been home in a couple days. And Sam is like, Sam, okay, so Jess comes downstairs and Dean is like, huh, hey girl, and is like clearly like it's so weird because he does look at her and he's like, oh yeah, like you're so hot, you're way out of my brother's league, whatever. And I'm like, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go change, because she's wearing her pajamas, she's wearing like booty shorts and a crop top, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna go change, and he's like, what? No, don't go change. I'm like, sir, you're so toxic.
And Sam is standing there like, I am very uncomfortable with the energy we have in the studio
Yeah.
today.
And then Sam then goes, oh, well, whatever you have to say to me, you can say in front of her. And Dean's like, Dad went on a hunting trip and he hasn't been home for a couple days. And Sam's immediately like, Jess, can you excuse us?
He's like, oh shit, it's some monster shit. Fuck.
It's like, damn. I do like an AU where he looks at Jess and he's like, so listen, here's the deal. And she's like, oh, just don't go. And he's like, oh, okay. I just think he would benefit from a woman. She
just like goes with them and she's like, oh, fuck it, cool.
Yeah. She's like, Dean wouldn't have gotten arrested if I was there.
She's like, oh, rip to Dean, but just is built different.
She literally is. Adrian Palicki, I'm so sorry, girl.
It is, so basically, yeah, and he's like, and basically Sam then is like, okay, but why the fuck did you come here though? Like, he's an alcoholic, he disappears all the time, why the fuck do you need my help? And he's basically like, yeah, I mean, he does. Dean's like, yeah, I mean, he is kind of a deadbeat, but like, he's been gone a little bit longer than normal, and I cannot get in contact with him, and I am having one of those moments.
Yeah, Dean's
he's like, I'm trying to cover it up. He's like, I'm trying to cover it up with like toxic masculinity, but I am like literally having a breakdown.
Yeah. Also, there is a part where when Sam's like, fine, I'll go with you, we'll go look for Dad. They go to get in the car, and Sam's like, why didn't you go with Dad on the hunt? And he's like, dude, I'm 26. To which I had the realization that Dean Winchester is only 26 and Sam Winchester is 22 in that first episode. So
it's a lot for me because the first time I saw this, I was like 17. Yeah. And now I'm 27. So I'm older than Dean Winchester.
And you know what, though? What I like, Claudia, is that the difference between us is the same as the difference between Sam and Dean. No. So, like, I do feel like that's kind of what we need, the energy we need to bring. Can you be a little bit more toxic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the toxic, repressed bisexual, and you're the younger, more competent sibling going to graduate school.
I'm just some guy. I do kind of have the same haircut as him now.
You are taller than me.
That is true. I do have tall girl syndrome.
Yeah, so the TLDR of this episode is that then they're like, Sam basically gets dragged on this hunt, and he's like, hey, bestie, I have an interview for law school like on Monday, so we're gonna need to wrap this the fuck up. Yeah. And Dean's like, why would you want to like do that? And he's like, and he's like, and you're gonna like marry her and like have a life? And Sam's like, yeah, maybe I'm want to live a normal fucking life, you fucking weirdo. And they get into like a kind of a fight where Sam is like, I know that like you're like in your shit or whatever, but like I have unpacked my emotional shit and I don't remember Mom at all because I was a fucking baby. So I've moved on with my fucking life, and that's a you problem. And Dean is like, go fuck yourself. And at one point Dean does this thing, and he does this in the previous few seasons where he's like, no chick flick moments, which is so funny because this entire show is these two brothers having this same conversation about their fucking feelings all the time, sometimes multiple times per episode. I'm like, you have more talks about your emotions than most chick flicks. I consider it camp.
When he said that happens is Sam and Dean go to this town, Jericho, California, which based on the fact section in IMDb is an entirely fabricated place. but they're like, they go and they get a hotel, and they are using a fake credit card because we find out that Dean and his dad, in order to make money, just run credit card scams. So he has a fake name, and they go to pay for the hotel room, and the gentleman working at the hotel is like, "Hey, girl, are you guys having a family reunion? Because someone with your last name came by the other day," which they find out to be their dad. So they go to this hotel room, and in the hotel room they have this heart to heart, and they find out their dad was going full Pepe Silva, which is with all of like the red string and all of like the
It's Always Sunny.
yeah. So they're in there, and Sam's like, dang, he's crazy. Dean's like, so true, bestie. But that's when they have that like no chick flick moments, and I was like, who do they think the audience of this show is? Like,
I think and that becomes that is the central problem of Supernatural, is that the mismatch between who they think the audience is and then what they write for that audience is so dissonant that it created this monster.
yeah.
So you get like intense amounts of queer coding, very interesting concepts about like, especially towards the end, about like narrative and destiny and like God and all this kind of stuff or whatever. But then at the same time, like the most toxic cis hetero normativity as possible, because they're like, we're for men.
Yeah, I'm like, I hate to break this to you, but everyone watching this is a gay teenager.
Is a gay teenager, or like a like white mom in her 30s or 40s.
Yeah, who's watching it? 'Cause she's like, I just think they're handsome. Sorry, not to demean women. I'm so sorry, women.
Women. But the other, like, I think this is one of the few shows that like survived or was still on. Like, it went from when it was the WB to the CW. So like the CW is very like to the teen audience, and you know, and
yeah,
women and whatever. Even though there's a lot of comic book shows and whatever, but they're very much like more of a diverse audience, or even more female focused if you want to get like gendered about it.
yeah.
And this show is like a vestige of a time where they were like, what if we made they're like, all right, cop procedurals work, what if we did like, they're like, and you know, the X-Files worked, what if we did it with men with guns?
Yeah. And with a spooky ghost. I do want to say something I did gloss over before they go to this hotel. They go to the scene of, so we see a flat like earlier in the episode, like right before, like right after they leave Stanford to come here, we see a scene of a gentleman on the phone with his girlfriend driving his car. And I did realize like how long ago this was, because it wasn't on speaker. He was just like holding his phone up to his ear, which was very funny to me.
Mid-2000s.
But he was talking to his girlfriend Amy, and he was like, oh my god, Amy, yeah, I'll call you back later. And he sees this woman standing on the side of the road wearing a white dress, and she gets in this car and is like, can you take me home? And he's like, oh hell yeah, babe. And there's like a scene of him like staring at her boobs. It's really weird.
There's
and
a
then
lot of that in the early Supernatural, to be honest.
So he drives her to this house, and it's like totally abandoned, and he's like, girl, you do not live here. And she was like, actually, kill yourself. And she drives, I guess she scares him. He drives his car to the end of a bridge, and then there is a very funny blood splatter effect on the inside of this car to signify that this young man did pass away. So the next scene we see is Sam and Dean going to the scene of this crime and walking up to these police officers with fake marshal badges, being like, we're marshals. And he's like, you're a little young to be a marshal. And they're like, anyway.
And they have like a classic car, and they're wearing like leather jackets. It's very funny watching it now, because like later on, like it's a very big convention of the show that like they put on their stupid little suits, and they like have a different like ID and whatever every time they pretend to be some government official. But in this first episode, they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk up and be like, hi, I'm a US Marshal, what's up?
Yeah, and they're like, you're 26. No, you're not. And
You're
then
20?
and then the cop is like, so they get the information, they find out like the only people who get killed on this road are men, whatever. And, and the marshal is like, or the cop is like kind of talking about whatever's going on, and Dean is like, that's what I'd expect from you guys. And Sam's like, what is wrong with you? Are you trying to blow our cover? And I was like, oh my god, Dean Winchester said a cab.
Yeah, it is kind of powerful because he does get like arrested in the first episode.
Yeah, so immediately after the scene where they see their dad's hotel room, um, which happens right after this, they're like, okay, we need to go figure out what's. Oh, before that, they do at the scene of the crime. This woman does take over Dean's car and try to run them off of a bridge, and Dean does fly over a bridge. So that was funny.
It's very funny. There's also at one point the Agent Mulder and Agent Scully.
He does
which is
call like two FBI agents do actually show up, and as they're leaving, he's like Agent Mulder and Scully. I'm like,
and
sir.
it's funny because then later on in the show, every time they pretend to be FBI agents, they pick like the most stupid. They're like, "Hi, my name is Agent Bowie and Agent like
I
like
do very like specifically remember Dean saying like, my name's Robert Plant, and I'm like, girl.
like Bessie, I don't think that's gonna work, love. I don't.
Yeah.
But like I have to say, I mean, I've watched a lot of shows where like, oh, maybe the first season isn't very strong, or like obviously the pilot isn't very strong or whatever, but it takes a couple episodes to get in. This is a very strong pilot. Like
Yeah.
it covers a lot of ground, and it's also like interesting. It like piques your interest. You get to know a lot about the characters. I think maybe this is just like how TV was made differently in those days, or maybe different freedom that they had, whatever. I'd love to know actually more, but like,
I mean,
it's a very there's not a lot of shows where I'm like, the pilot is actually extremely good, other than the misogyny.
Other than that, but I mean, the other thing too, like the pacing's really good, and I think it's like, okay, we only really have one episode to hook people, we can't make an entire season.
Basically what they're doing two things at the same time. Basically is they start to solve this case because that's what their dad was doing. So they're both trying to find their dad and try to solve this case at the same time, which is like kind of a lot for the first episode. And also it's establishing all of their background shit because there was the flashbacks and whatever. So like there is both, we need the background on this case, and we're learning about the random people in this town and the random background of who this woman is. But then we also are finding out about, like, what does John Winchester do on hunts? Why is he missing? Where the fuck is he? This is all very funky at the same time.
I think it is just very funny because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, the pilot episode of the show really does kind of slap. Like, it does kind of slap.
Yeah.
I just to like kind of summarize where we are like with the mission so far. Dean comes to get Sam, and he's like, Dad went missing. Sam and Dean go off to go on their fun little adventure. Dean is like, Dad was chasing a lead here in this town. So they go to the town. They find out about the dude who went missing. They talk to the police. They go and talk to his girlfriend who he was on the phone with. And his girlfriend's like, yeah, he was on the phone with me and then he just disappeared. And
with
they
her,
go
like, their lesbian looking Avril Lavigne friend who like walks up to her and is like, hey bestie, who are these like random guys talking to you? I am going to supervise because this is very scary.
And they're like, Dean and Sam did say we were his uncles from out of town. Like, it was just so weird, but it was very funny. But so they meet with this girl, they go to this diner, and her friend is like, they're like, so all of the victims that have been killed on this road were men, or who have disappeared on this road were men. Like, is there any other connection? That's kind of what they're trying to figure out. Because there's a couple of victims over the course of a couple of years, and there was no one was like arrested or they never found out who did it. So their dad was like, I gotta figure out what's going on. And that's why he was there. So they're talking to this girl and they're like, what happened? And her friend is like, well, it's just a myth, but there's a saying, if you were a man and you were unfaithful, you'd get taken by her, and you disappear if you picked her up as a hitchhiker. So they're like, okay, cool. Then they go back to this road to investigate. They get out of the car, they have a little fight.
This is when Dean, they have a little fight, and then this is when Dean gets run off the road. And I will say that there's also gifs from this scene also were always very popular on Tumblr, because it's like Dean looking very attractive in certain lighting. The one with the keys where he's like, uh-oh, why is the car moving? I have the keys kind of deal.
Yeah.
This is where they get like run over, but because of this, they do get run over and almost fucking die.
Dean does like fly over the side of a bridge that they did explicitly say that the woman, the titular, she's not titular, the episode's called Pilot, but the woman who is like the ghost, what they had looked up had said like, there was a scene where they went to the library and used Google, which was very funny.
Well, it was kind of a cool establishing thing, though, because Sam's whole thing is I'm the one with who's good with technology and research, and the whole establishing thing of this episode is that they're like, oh, they work well together, because Dean is like typing in random shit into Google or whatever the equivalent of it is at that time, being like, woman, female murder.
Yeah, he literally does look up female murder hitchhiking, and Sam is like, maybe it wasn't a murder, maybe it was suicide. So he looks up female suicide hitchhiking.
And you're like, oh no.
So this bridge that Dean fell off of, it is explicitly established that the woman who is the ghost killed herself by jumping off of this bridge. And then Dean does fall off the side of the bridge. I was like, is he gonna pass away?
Well, as we know, the only thing that can kill Dean is a rusty nail.
But so Dean is like, he flies over the side of the bridge and he gets out and he's all muddy. So he's like, dang, we need to get a hotel. So they go to a hotel and are like, can we please stay here? And the guy was like, wow, the name on your credit card's the same as this other guy who checked in. And they're like, oh my God, that's our dad. So they go to the room and see that he has his whole, like all of the pictures of all of the men who had died on this road and like the name of this girl and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And Dean is like, okay, well, we should figure out what to do. And Sam's like, oh, we should go talk to the husband. And then they kind of have a little heart to heart, and Dean's like, no chick flick moments. And then Dean's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go step out for a second. And he walks outside and immediately gets arrested.
And they're like, Bessie, we know that you are doing fake shit. And he's like, me?
Yeah.
Never. And he basically is like, hey, Sam, you should get the fuck out of here. And then Sam does go and have a little girl boss moment where, like,
yeah, while Dean is in jail.
This is what made me a Sam girl, because this is like a thing that they do in like every episode where he either is like, I'm gonna be empathetic with the people, or he has like a little sassy girl boss moment where he goes to the woman who they think is the ghost's husband's house, and he's like, hey, do you like do you know what happened here, like,
to your wife, like
whatever. And he starts like interrogating him, and then he's like, by the way, did you know that there's this legend? And I'm like, wow, Sam was really entering his Joker era.
Basically.
And he's like, did you know that there's this like legend or whatever? And it's about men who are unfaithful. And he's like, how was your marriage? And this guy's like, get the fuck off my fucking lawn, bitch.
Yeah. Literally. So like they find out like, oh, she's a woman in white. And that's like the big buzzword, because the legend is that women who get cheated on will go into like a supernatural fit of rage and drown their children and then kill themselves and then come back as white women who kill unfaithful men.
They come back as white women.
White women in white, not a white woman.
They come back as white women.
Oh my God. No, they come back as a woman in white. So Sam's like, hey, did you cheat on your wife? And he was like, I may not have been the perfect husband, but I don't think she would have killed our kids.
He's like, we all make mistakes.
He said, oh my God, Poverty's perfect.
Everybody has those days.
Yeah, and then Sam's like, girl, I hate you, and leaves. And then we see Dean in jail. And the guy from the police station, the chief, I guess, is like, okay, who are you? And he's like,
You're also
I'm not gonna tell
he's like
you.
he's like, we found this fucking notebook with all this crazy shit in it. Can you tell us what it is? And he's like, oh my god, that's my dad's notebook.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's so funny. And there's literally a page that says Dean, and then it has coordinates on it, which in the episode later, they're like, oh, this is where dad wanted us to meet him next, like, or whatever.
It's like, because he was a Marine and he only used coordinates. Dad moment. And you're like,
oh my god.
Oh, man. This is a lot. It basically, so yeah, I mean, Dean breaks out of jail with a paperclip. It's all very funky fresh of him. A cab.
Yeah.
And he breaks out of jail because Sam calls in a fake 911 call. So, like, the Winchester brothers did say a cab.
That's the other thing. Maybe I just don't know how small towns work, but I'm like, how long between him calling 911 and the police being dispatched occurred? It was just a lot. But so Dean gets out of jail and he goes and calls Sam and he's like, hey, bestie, what do we do? And Sam's like, oh, we need to find her body and burn it because that's what the myth says. And as he's saying that on the phone, she does appear in his car and she's like, hey, can we drive to my house? Because he does find out that her body is buried behind her old house, which is what he finds out from the husband. So he's like, I don't want to drive you to your house. And she's like, well, that's okay. I'll drive me to my house, and does take over his car to drive to the house.
Moment.
Self-driving woman in white.
The woman in white is Elon Musk.
Not Elon in white. Oh my god. Grimes girl, get out of there.
Oh my god, the woman in white is Grimes. So this is where the show, it very much takes a very heterosexual turn, because she like forcibly drives the car to her own house, and then he's like, so why won't you go in your own house then? And then she's like, will you come inside? He's like, no.
Yeah, and then she tries like, to like,
she appears like creepily in his front seat, and she's like, are you sure? And he's like, no. And he's like, and she's like, well, or he's like, well, I haven't been unfaithful. She's like, you will be.
He said, you can't kill me, like you can't fight me. I haven't been unfaithful to my girlfriend. And she's like, you will be. And then she does kiss him on the mouth.
Like she keeps trying to, and he's like, like, girl, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah. Then she does. As she is kissing him, he's trying to pull the car keys out because I guess he thinks that'll work, despite the fact that we know she doesn't need car keys. Then Dean shows up and does start shooting in the window of the car at her,
Dean is
the ghost.
Definition of, and so I just started swinging.
Literally. And then so he shoots this ghost. She like disappears for a second and then comes back, and she looks disgusting, like she's clearly like a corpse, like a monster, but she's still like attacking Sam.
Yeah,
so
Dean's like she like digs her fucking claws into she like disappears, and then Sam like suddenly like convulses, and like her fucking claws are coming out of him.
She's like, I went to the salon in the last like 0.2 seconds, got some acrylics. She's digging them into Sam. Dean shoots her. She kind of like fades out of reality and then comes back. Then he just keeps shooting her and it keeps not working. Dean was literally like, Sam, what the heck?
Right there.
Yeah, Dean's like, that didn't work. Let me try again.
And then I don't know how Sam like gets up or whatever, but eventually Sam like gets up and he's like, you know what, fuck this, and then he just takes the car and he floors it into the house, and he's like, and this is his girl boss moment, and where he's like, yeah, I'm taking you home. He just hits the gas and goes straight into this woman's abandoned house to like take the ghost home, and then there's like this weird thing where like the ghosts of the children, you see them with the water running, like clearly she has drowned them. Yeah, she drowned them, whatever, and like basically she could never, and he's like, oh, she could never go home because she couldn't face them, and like basically she gets destroyed by the ghosts of her own children because she killed them. It's very fucked up.
And she felt so guilty. Like one of the things throughout the episode was her saying, like, to the people who would pick her up, she would saying, I can never go home. And they're like, okay, cool. So they take her home, and then they're like, she could never go home because she couldn't face what she had done. I'm like, I think she couldn't go home because she was a ghost. I don't know about you
Like,
guys.
yeah, and then they're like, we did it, Joe. And then they're
Yeah.
like, so anyway, we do have to find Dad.
Yeah. And then
Like,
Sam's like, you have to find Dad. I have an interview. I'm leaving.
and Dean's like, so you don't love me then?
Yeah.
So you don't like this family? And he's like,
Yeah.
clearly. And then
Basically.
then they do the High School Music. Oh, what about us? What about everything we've been through?
Yeah, and
What
he's
about trust?
yeah, Sam's like, girl, I've told you like 8 times that I don't want to be doing this. Can I please leave? So Dean's like, fine, I'll find out by myself. And he's like, well, maybe we can meet up later. And he's like, fuck you. So he takes Sam home and drops him off. And he's like, yeah, we were a good team out there. And Sam's like, cool, goodbye. um, yeah, then he goes back into his house and he's like, Jess,
She's like in the
hey.
shower.
Yeah, he hears the shower running. He goes and lays down on the bed and is like, I'm sleepy. And then a drop of blood comes down and lands on his forehead. And he's like,
And guess who's on the ceiling?
on fire is Jess.
Also, I was like, girl, Jess, no, because she's like clearly a sporty kind of girl. Like,
Yeah.
to bed, she wears like boxer shorts and a t-shirt. But when she's like, you know, pinned to the ceiling dead, for some reason, she's wearing like, you know, a white slip. And you're like, what's all this then?
No, literally. She was like, I think this would be a good outfit for it in case anything weird were to happen to me and I need to be a parallel for my boyfriend's mom. I just think this would be a fun, flirty outfit in case that happens.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Dean, like, and then of course, like, the house catches on fire.
And like fucking explodes.
A good thing they didn't have any roommates. And then
Yeah.
Dean like bursts in, is like, Sam, we gotta get you out of here. And it's like, wow, it's like poetry, it rhymes, love. It's like
Literally.
poetry rhymes.
No, truly. I will say, there was so much symbolism, like, that I was almost like, okay, like, let's calm down a little. This is the first episode. Because then they go back out to the car while the firefighters are like figuring out what is going on with the house. And Sam walks like to the trunk of the car and is like going through it and like cocks a shotgun or whatever. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know guns. And Dean's like, are you okay? Because that's what Dean sounds. and Sam is like, yeah, we need to find that thing. Because throughout the entire episode, his whole thing was that he's like, look, even if we find the thing, like, Dad's crazy because he wants to find the thing that killed Mom. And even if he does, what's he going to do? Like, it's been however long, like, he needs to learn to let go. So then Jess dies and Sam is like, actually, I think we do need to kill that thing.
He's like, mansplain, man. Oh my God. So which one of them is manipulate, mansplain, man whore? That's Dean.
Well, because yeah, but I think we get mansplain, manipulate, male wife. I think that's John Winchester, their dad.
Yeah, I think so. Because he's shitty, but loves his wife.
Yeah, that's his basically only character trait, is that he does love his wife very much.
He loves his wife, but is a very bad person.
He's a bad dad, bad guy. But yeah, so the episode ends with them being like, let's go to the coordinates.
And then
Dad
you have
left.
the very classic shot of them like closing the trunk or whatever, which was also a big feature of Super Hulock Tumblr, where they were like, let's get to business or whatever. And I did feel a little something there. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I get why this made me feel fucking crazy when I started watching it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I do like this show.
Yeah, no, truly. It really was like that moment. I was like, oh my God. I will say though, because as a kid, I was a teenager. I was still a kid. But I think when you're first kind of watching it without the knowledge of anything that happens later, and I know I'm trying to go into it like pretending I don't have any knowledge, you're like, oh, like, that's so, like, it's cool, he's getting back into it. But all I could think of the whole time was like, dang, he really like escaped this toxic cycle, and then he's like, anyway, I'm re-entering the toxic codependent cycle.
No, literally, I remember, like, I went through the, like, 7 stages of grief in the, like, last couple of episodes of the entire show. After the Destiel episode comes the, like, end of the arc, and then the end of the show, and the end of the show episode is a big problem. And one of the big problems was, like, people were like, if you go back to the beginning of the series, they didn't change as people from the beginning to the end. Like, yeah, they are like bookends, and that's really sad with all the shit that they went through. They went through the same shit over and over, and at the end of the day, like, I think they even say in this first episode, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna live your, like, white picket fence life and then whatever, and, like, that's exactly what Sam does, and then Dean fucking dies. And I remember that's why I like rewatching this first episode made me more angry about the last episode, because I was like, you know what, they really did these bitches dirty. And also it's a little, I don't, this, not for me to like get deep or anything, but it's a kind of like, I've talked about this with the Star Wars sequels or with various things or whatever, of like, not like everything has to have a happy ending, but it really does suck when, like, there's no at least development or something at the end, where at the end of the day they're like, actually nothing changed.
Yeah, like it has to be a full, like a fulfilling ending. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
happy. It just has to have like, I have to feel like there's a value to watching it. I
Yeah,
think
well,
that
and
was like a problem. I didn't watch this show, but I think that's kind of what happened with Game of Thrones, is that it was like the ending was not fulfilling. I
well,
know
I
it's a
felt
little different, but
I felt like in universe, like, ethically, like, did they save a lot of people's lives? Yes. Did the effort matter? Yes. But at the end of the day, uh not a lot was fixed permanently, and
yeah.
then Dean fucking like goes through all that and then fucking dies. And there's this whole thing at the end of the show about like writing your own story and like who does whatever, and then they kind of invalidate that. So then watching that at the beginning is like, it's really difficult to watch and be like, wow, this conversation that Sam and Dean has at the beginning is the exact same conversation that they have at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm depressed. Like I, if this had been me when I was first watching Supernatural, I would have been upset. Like, I was like, oh, I genuinely gave a shit. Like,
Yeah.
even if I have problems with the show, it was very much of like, oh, what message does this send? A very
Yeah.
depressing one. I don't know, like, because there's other pieces of Dean's story or whatever where like he learns, like, he becomes less of a toxic masculinity, or like he learns to love other people, and like, you know, he has his pseudo son or whatever. Like, he actually has a lot of growth or whatever. Like, he basically does say I love you to Castiel at one point. Whatever. Or even with Sam, like, there's a lot of growth that does happen, and then they're just like, so anyways,
Yeah, I think
we're
a lot of the thing too about Dean, at least from what I've seen of the show, is that he is like constantly, and I think it's a perfect thing about this first episode. A lot of it is him putting Sam ahead of himself and being like, oh, I need to protect you, not because he's like, obviously it's because he like loves Sam, he's his brother, but also because their dad, when their house is exploding as children, their dad's like, you need to get your brother out of here. And it's almost like he's lived with that same mindset of like their dad being like, okay, well, you need to be like the protector and the adult in this family. And I think a lot of that was Dean sort of quarreling with that, and with like learning to unlearn his shitty dad. And I think it
he
would have been
gets
nice to
through a
see him
lot
like,
of that in some of the
yeah,
series, and then it kind of is gone back on, which, so I think that's also why many people identify with him.
I just think that the perfect ending, like that's like breaking the cycle, he settles down with Cass and raises their weird antichrist child. I don't know what happens to him. I assume he's not around at the end, but
I love you, Jack. It's difficult watching. I also, like, I did kind of get into my brain rot era, because you're trying to rewatch this as like
like a,
as a new watcher. I'm trying to rewatch it as like through a lens of knowing that Destiel is coming. How does that make this different? And boy, does it make it different, because the whole thing with Castiel in that episode, in the one that is the anniversary that we are celebrating today, is where he's like this is also why it makes me upset. Like, Castiel is like, you made me a better person. Like, you made me love humanity. I mean, we'll get into talking about
Yeah.
Destiel. But speaking of like, just I remember there was a Tumblr post, and there were many of these. Um,
Ugh. Remember that
talking
one time there
about
was a Tumblr post? Hate that.
yeah, of talking about like all the angel and demon imagery, but angel imagery because angels don't really come in until like Castiel and stuff in season 4 or 5. After the whole like first arc of Azazel and everything. And people were talking about like, what does all the angel imagery mean? Like, I think his mother at one point says like, oh, there's always going to be angels watching over you or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so then from then on, everyone was like, oh, so here are all the moments that like Castiel was watching over Dean even before they
Oh
even
my
met.
God.
And so
Stop.
that's all I think about.
Why did that just oh my God. Also, okay, I
That's
will
why
say
he didn't die when he got thrown off the bridge.
Cass was like, girl, are you kidding me? I've been trying so hard, you motherfucker. You basically jumped. Also, okay, funny thing, the car was chasing them. Sam did not fly off the bridge. Sam just like jumped over it, and Dean, like, he freaking jumped for his life. God. But oh my God.
Not me. I'm entering full Destiel brain rot era.
I do like the idea of the episode just ending with Dean falling off the bridge and passing away. Like, they're just like, oh shit, that sucks anyway.
I mean, that is how the entire series ends.
Oh my God. Spoilers for Supernatural.
Like, that's how this entire series ends.
Oh my God.
That is the other piece. Not only try to look at it from the lens of Destiel, but also I'm not going to be one of those people who pretends that the last episode doesn't exist, even though I desperately want to, and most of the time I do. I am going to look at it through the lens of knowing that he does die on a rusty nail.
That is after all this motherfucker survives. If I'm not mistaken, he does literally go to hell and have like hooks and shit through him, and Cass is like, hey, bestie,
oh, he survives
come back to life.
In the cage.
Yeah.
Like
in every horrible situation, he's like, all right,
but
like water off a duck's back.
Juggalo clowns, those are too much.
That's so hateful. It's so hateful. Dean Winchester, girl,
get out of there.
How long is this man been fighting and he hasn't thought to get a Kevlar vest? We're gonna try to do this once a week. I think our plan is to release on Tuesdays. So today is a special Destiel Day release. Congratulations. We did it, everyone.
For those of you who don't know why we are called the Mystery Spot, and why we will be releasing on Tuesdays, eventually we will get to the episode that explains that. But to give you a little preview, one of the best episodes of Supernatural, like unironically, is a Groundhog Day-esque episode where Sam is trapped in an infinite loop. Where he wakes up every morning. It is Tuesday, and Heat of the Moment by Asia is playing. And Dean is always like, pig in a poke special. But the reason that we decided to name it that is because we feel like we are Sam Winchester trapped at the Mystery Spot. Because we can never leave.
On the day of recording this, it has been 344 days since Supernatural ended. And we are here talking about it once again.
It's just so we're stuck here. And we're gonna take you on this journey. So thanks for listening. If you want to hear more from us, we are two of the co-hosts on RuPaul's Pod Race, which is a queer Star Wars podcast. You can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on our social media at Mystery Spotcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. See you next Tuesday for more slaying people, queer baiting things, the supernatural business.